We are going to go ahead and go down the sign-in list, and please just acknowledge if you're here. Susan Anderson.
I'm here. Thank you.
Hugh Biggle.
Here.
Trisha Boyer.
Here.
Alan Galicia.
Here.
Albert Garcia.
Here.
Dana Alvarez. Dana. Okay. Hung Hu.
Here.
Bruce Littleton.
Here.
Ying Yang Liu. Ying Yang. David Lucas.
Here.
Scott Nodes.
Here.
Eduardo Rodales.
Here.
Marshall Regal.
Here.
Raquel Schatz.
Here.
Ward Stanford. Mike Sutton.
Here.
Tessa Wessel. Tessa. Okay, Tony Whitfield.
Here.
John Willett. John. April Wire.
Here.
And Marty Zeig.
Here.
Okay, are there any other members participating by teleconference I have not mentioned?
Sorry, this is Tessa with the City of El Mirage.
Thanks, Tessa.
Dana Alvidra, City of Chandler.
Okay, thank you, Dana. We have quorum, so this meeting of the MAG ITS committee is called to order. Please mute your microphone to eliminate any feedback. You'll have the opportunity to use the raise your hand icon to be recognized, at which time you can unmute your microphone to talk. When you begin speaking, please state your name and your organization. With that, we'll move on to item number 2, call to the audience. Members of the public were asked to submit written comments related to this meeting through the MAG website. Comments may be sent at any time leading up to the meeting, but must be received at least 1 hour before the posted start time. This is the opportunity for members of the public to comment on items that fall under MAG jurisdiction, but are not on the agenda or on the agenda for discussion and not for action. Eric, do we have any public comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the ITS committee. We have received no comments on this or any other item on the agenda.
Thank you, Eric. With that, we'll move on to item number 3, approval of the minutes. Please take a few moments to review the minutes from the July 7th meeting, if you have not already. Does any committee member have any revisions? Please use the raise your hand icon for your request at this time. Okay, could I have a motion to recommend approval of the meeting minutes of July 7th, 2021? Please indicate so by selecting the raise your hand icon. David, I see that you raised your hand. And can I have a
Yes, Mr.
second?
Chair, I would like to move that we accept the meeting minutes of the July 7th meeting.
Thank you, David. And it looks like Scott, you seconding?
Yes, I second his motion.
Thank you, Scott. With that, we have a motion from David Lucas and a second from Scott Nodes. When I call your name, please indicate a yay or nay. Susan Anderson,
Yay.
Hugh Biggle,
Yay.
Trisha Boyer,
Yay.
Alan Galicia,
Yay.
Albert Garcia,
Yay.
Dana Alvarez,
Yay.
Hong Ho,
Yay.
Bruce Littleton, Bruce,
Yay.
David Lucas,
Yay.
Scott Nodes,
Yay.
Eduardo Rudales, Eduardo, Marshall Regal,
Yay.
Raquel Schatz,
Yay.
Mike Sutton,
Yay.
Tessa Wessel,
Yay.
John Willett,
Aye.
April Wire,
Yay.
and Marty Zeig.
Yay.
With a motion and a second with members polled on the teleconference, the motion passes. The next item is item number 4, the program manager's report. The MAG TSMO programmer manager, Jeff Jenk, will now provide updates and a report to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, committee member. Next slide, please. The first item on my report is a federal update. As usual, I would like to invite Ms. Tony Whitfield of the Arizona FHWA division to give that report. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning, everyone. I have a couple slides, a few updates today. The first item is a reminder. The notice of funding opportunity for the ATC-MTD program is out. The applications are being accepted through August 23rd. So you can find more information by visiting the link on the website or on the slide. The next item, there's another notice of funding opportunity out for the Accelerated Innovation Deployment called the AID Demonstration Program. This came out on July 1st, and it's for FY21, and this program makes up to $10 million available in grants to accelerate the implementation and adoption of innovation in highway transportation. So eligible activities involve any phase of a highway transportation project between project planning and project delivery. So that includes planning, financing, operations, structures, materials, pavements, environment, and construction. So all phases. FHWA will provide these aid demonstration grants to eligible state DOTs, federal land management agencies, and tribal governments. So there was a notice of intent to apply deadline that just passed. The purpose of that was to give Federal Highway an idea of the number of resources they would need to evaluate the applications. The notice of intent is not a requirement to be able to apply. But the application submission deadline for that grant program is September 23rd. There was also a webinar that was recorded and will be made available on the program website. So for more details of that program and I'm not sure if the webinar is posted yet, but eventually to find that webinar, please visit the program website. The third item on that slide there's a webinar that might interest you. It's the National Operations Center of Excellence in Federal Highway that are hosting this webinar on August 10th, titled Adventures in Crowdsourcing Emergency Management. And this webinar spotlights the use of crowdsourced data to enhance transportation agency operations during emergency management situations. And those would be situations like evacuations, storms, post-event recovery. There will be a few different presenters sharing their experiences from Florida, Alabama, and Kentucky. And participants will learn how regional agencies are leveraging new crowdsourced data to improve operations during these emergencies. So to learn more about that and to register, follow the link. And I believe I have one more slide, so next slide, please. A couple more items that may be of interest. The University of Wisconsin developed a 3-day work zone design course through a federal highway safety grant. And this course focuses on safe system design principles and covers lighting, positive protection, traffic incident management, and bike ped access considerations in work zone design. So they were offering three separate sessions of this training. One has already passed, it was in July. So there are 2 remaining. August 9th through 11th is one, and then August 24th through 26th is another. For more details on that program, feel free to reach out to University of Wisconsin contact on the slide, Adam, and you can register for either one of those courses at the link provided on the slide. And then the last item, University of Wisconsin developed an oversized overweight vehicle accommodation and work zones document. This is also done through a federal highway work zone safety grant. And this publication provides information on how to consider accommodating and mitigating oversized and overweight vehicles in work zones. So it is intended to be a reference material to supplement other documents that the agency may have, such as work zone manuals and guidance and different policies and procedures. So to find that document, visit the link on the slide. And that concludes my updates.
Thank you, Tony, as usual, on a great update. Next slide, please. As we wrap up the 2021 TSOP project, the next wave of a TSOP project is around the corner. As you know, that the TSOP is one of the well-received program from MAC that aims to make the real-world differences in terms of traffic operations. So I would like to invite Mr. Eric Nava, who is managing the MAC TSOP projects, to give an update.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the ITS committee meeting. This is a short update. As of right now, back in the June timeframe, we did the call for projects in May and through June, getting all the projects approved through or recommended approval at the ITS committee. The projects were recently recommended approval in the Transportation Review Committee, and we're waiting for 2 more committee approvals. One will be the MAG Management Committee, which is actually a week from today, followed by the Regional Council Executive, which will happen on August 16th. So once that has been finally approved of the list of projects, we will be able to proceed with scoping and getting the projects off and running. And as a reminder, some of these projects, again, we're still working to either consolidate some of the listings to be a little more consistent and easier to manage. But some of these projects will be going in the fall of this year, and some will be going in the spring of 2022. So more on that as we move along, and we'll be contacting, or the project managers will be contacting agencies and consultants on the scoping as soon as projects have been approved. that concludes my update.
Thank you, Eric. Next slide, please. Next is an update on the RCN. And RCN is no doubt one of the region's most valuable assets in terms of ITS and public safety. I'd like to invite MAG's RCN Program Manager, Ryan Gish, to provide this update.
Thank you, Jeff. That's kind of a big boost there, so I'll take it for what I can. Yes, thank you, Chair and members of the ITS committee. Just a quick update here to go over some things because it's been probably a few months since we've had a little update here. One of the biggest one we kind of want to point out here is part of our regional fiber upgrade project. We had just completed our first task, or we'll call it a project because it's a project within a project. This is the fiber path along Durango Street that connects the McDowell TMC to TOC. So very important fiber path or link. It's been hit several times, and working with the task force as part of this upgrade project, we felt this was probably the best project to kind of get on our belt or under our belt here and just say, okay, we're going to get this one done. So it was close to the time there, but we were able to finish it up at the end of fiscal year. A few things kind of trickled to the end with testing and getting documentation, but at least able to get a majority of it done. There was a few hiccups along the way with clearing blocked conduits with a lot of mud and stuff like that. So I had some really good pictures to show for that. And then also we had to do a small hiccup on the delivery of the fiber cable. But in the end, the contractor was able to complete the link, and we got a brand new cable run between the two buildings. So I want to thank ADOT and McDOT for you guys' help, because I know a lot of it was last minute I guess, request to be able to get into buildings or pathways and whatnot. So really appreciate you guys' extra help on that and working with us. Aside from that, actually I'll just jump in. So our next topic here is the ITS security and awareness training. ITS security is a topic that came up at our most recent Aztec Ops meeting, and felt it was something good that should carry over into the ITS committee here. So as a joint effort with McDowell, Gilbert, and MAG, we'll be exploring options for ITS security training and some type of awareness. Security is sometimes one of those things that kind of gets left to the side with a lot of our transportation systems. And, it makes sense because it kind of runs on its own sometimes. But as we move forward, we're kind of opening up a lot of our doors, either wirelessly to cabinets or maybe things are just physically not as secure. So it's something I think we kind of need to create a little more awareness. And if we have some options for training, it's something I think we should probably look at doing. So I'll be working with those other agencies, and if others want to join in, it'll be helpful. But it was something that started through Aztec Ops that we thought was a good idea. We've done some training in the past, I know through MAG, at least just on the general like IT type of training. But this one we're going to try to do more of a security. And I know FHWA, and if I can get his name right, Ed Folk, did a really great presentation. I think that's probably 2 or 3 years ago. So I'll probably be bugging you, Tony, to see if maybe we can get him to come back out and give a little presentation or do something remotely. I think it'd be super helpful. So with that said, that's that. Also, the fiber upgrade task force that was kind of jointly or was running the main project that we got done here with McDOT and ADOT. I will be looking at kickstarting another project coming up soon, but we're going to have that meeting first. So the next meeting we'll have is in a couple weeks here on August 24th from 1 to 3. So those of you that are on it, please join. I know it's been a few months with that, but like I said, I just wanted to come to the table with something to be done before we just jumped into another meeting to talk and figure out what we're going to do next. So we have a couple of projects on the slate, see what we can get done, and yeah, so join that meeting. And the last one is a little bit of a plug for MAG here. As part of the RCN program, we were able to hire an intern and have somebody help me out, do different projects here and there, help out with the local agencies, and we felt it was necessary to jump from an intern to a full-time position. So we have a new position posted for an ITS communications analyst, and this person will be helping me out with the RCN and supporting you guys, or sort of supporting the local agencies. With that, that concludes my report. Jeff, we can't hear you.
Thank you, Ryan. As usual, I want to emphasize that the communication is such an important part of the ITS program in this region that I truly appreciate the RCN group, Ryan's RCN group, working closely with the TSMO in planning and execution of many of our plans defined in the SMNO plan. Also, I want to touch on the first item that Ryan reported on, that little, 2-mile stretch of fiber.
Just 1 mile, yeah.
1 mile stretch of fiber is really of regional significance. It links up between the ADOT and the McDowell TOCs. And that's really kind of the backbone of our regional ITS system, where we're talking about the RADs, ARIS, and all the great work that we did on the McDowell Road, on the video sharing and all that. I mean, that little stretch is really important. Really happy to see that part being upgraded and fixed. Right. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Jeff. I believe David Lucas, you had raised your hand.
David?
Yes, Ryan. Thank you. I just had a quick question. Will an invite be going out for the August 24th meeting? I didn't see it on the calendar, so.
Yes.
Eric, yes, I'll be sending that out.
Excellent. Thank you.
Great. Next slide, please. So the next item is the upcoming ITS Arizona Annual Conference. There's a lot being planned here, so we're happy to have the Vice President of ITS Arizona, David Lucas, to provide this update.
Thank you, Jeff. Mr. Chair and members of the ITS Committee. As Jeff said, I'm the current Vice President for ITS Arizona, and I'm also the conference chair. This year's conference is going to be in person at the Mesa Convention Center, which is our usual venue. As some of you might remember, last year we had to do a virtual event, but we're looking forward to returning this year in person. The draft conference program is now available online, and an email update was sent out last week with links to that as well. So please take a look at that. We have nearly 50 exhibitors and expect to fill up our remaining booth space this week. So we'll have a full slate of 50 exhibitors, and we currently have over 200 registrants. So if you've been waiting for the conference program to come out, been waiting for the new fiscal year to free up some training funds, just remember that registration prices do increase September 1st. So we definitely recommend that you sign up as soon as possible. Next slide, please. And also I'm sorry, if you could go to the previous one. All information is available on the conference website, and that's www.itsaz.org/conference. Next slide, please. Just to give you a quick update of some of the information, on Wednesday, September 29th, we're going to have our usual day one workshop. This year's topic will be on artificial intelligence in transportation. And I would like to thank ITS Arizona past president, Jeff Jank, who's done another excellent job putting together the workshop content. He's going to have experts from the industry that are going to tell us what artificial intelligence is and isn't. There's a lot of misinformation out there about what the capabilities are. And he's going to focus on specific topics in transportation, about communications, smart systems, smart sensors, things like that. So it's going to be a lot of excellent speakers. So I definitely encourage you to attend. We also have a session that's going to be talking about machine learning, and several of our sponsors and exhibitors at the conference have products and services in this area as well. So it definitely ties in well with what's going on in our industry. The exhibitor showcase and reception will also be on Wednesday following the day one workshop. And we're going to have a unique activity, a social activity that's going to be part of the reception this year as well. So we encourage you to attend. On Thursday, September 30th, which is our full day of the conference, we'll be kicking things off with a welcome and introduction and a keynote by Jack Sellers, who is the current chair of the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. As detailed in his bio that's on the website, he also has history, a lot of great history in the transportation area, as well as being a former transportation engineer. So definitely look forward to his keynote address. That will be followed by a in memoriam session. Later in the day, we'll have lunch with live music. In past years, we've tried to do speakers, different types of activities, but this year we thought we'd provide some live music so everybody could enjoy the opportunity to get back together. I know there's a lot of great conversation that's going to happen, so just provide some nice light live music in the background while you enjoy your lunch. And then of course, we'll have our technical sessions in our usual 3 tracks, 27 in total, and there's going to be a lot of great content. Going back to the in memoriam session, as we're all well aware, we lost quite a few people over the course of the pandemic. Tomas Guerra was a notable person that we lost, who is a ITS Arizona past president, as well as an integral member of the ITS community. And we want to offer this opportunity for any public, private agency members, anyone who is a participant in the ITS community, to acknowledge their passing. And so what I'm asking for in that is if you would please reach out to me with name, any photos, any details you have on anybody that we lost in our community. And we would like to recognize and just have a moment of silence to recognize the loss that we all experienced over this last year. With that, that concludes my update. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing everybody next month.
Thank you, David. Wonderful update. I think this concludes my program manager's report, Mr. Chair.
Sorry about that. Members of the committee can indicate their interest in providing a comment by selecting the raise your hand icon to be recognized. Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to item number 5, Regional Competitive Programs 2021 Call for Projects Overview. And we will be requesting action requested. A call for SMNO competitive projects was released on August 2nd, 2021 to program new projects for FY 2023 and FY 2024 identified in the MAG SMO plan. MAG staff will provide an overview on this call for projects. I'd like to invite Steve Tate with MAG to present this item.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, slideshow start?
Yes.
Okay, as the chairman stated, we now have a competitive call for projects for a number of categories, including SMNO, bicycle ped, dirt road paving, and sweepers. Next slide. Okay, all the applications you can find on the MAG website. Sorry, that's my phone. And it's all under a button called Current Opportunities. It's pretty easy to navigate. Those are the 2 links for it. Next slide, please. Okay, the schedule, which is I think the main important. As we mentioned earlier, the applications were released on Monday. They're all due September 21st. We don't accept late applications. I suggest strongly that you try to get the applications done early. If there are any issues, we can work with you during that time to help solve the problem before the due date. I mean, there's a total of 6 weeks available, so it should be easy to get them done early. There will be a special meeting on October 6th to go over the application. That's where presentations will be made. Presentations will need to be made by agency staff. Consultants can be used for answering technical questions. but it should be agency staff presenting it. The December 1st meeting, the committee will actually select the projects, and on January 26th, the regional council should finalize the selection process. Next slide. Okay, the ITS committee, SMO operations, you have approximately $22.7 million available. All that is CMAQ funding. Next slide. And that concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chair, this is Jeff Jink. Just want to say that the committee, the ITS committee, has worked really hard in preparation of this call for project since the early of this year, and want to emphasize that the MAG staff, the TSMO staffs are here to provide assistance with you in terms of applications. So I know you still have sufficient time before the due date of a proposal, but feel free to reach out to us if you have any question at all. We're here to help.
Appreciate that, Jeff. Seeing no questions, we'll go ahead and move on to item number 6, intersection and corridor performance evaluation using vehicle trajectory data. Vehicle trajectory data from connected vehicle technology is an emerging big data source. One application MAG has developed is using vehicle trajectory data to estimate performance metrics at arterial intersection and corridor level. MAG staff will share the findings of a recent MAG development to demonstrate the feasibility of using vehicle trajectory data to emulate the floating car studies usually done to assess arterial intersection and traffic signal performance. I'd like to invite Jeff Jink to provide an overview on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee members, in recent years, there are a lot of discussions on the crowdsourced data for transportation applications. I want to point out that MAG's data group program manager, Dr. Wang Zhang, is one of the pioneers in the nation in terms of exploring the crowdsourced data for potential for various transportation applications. The vehicle trajectory data in today's presentations are literally the vehicle trips data. Think of it as the trips recorded by the GPS from a fleet of automobiles from the vehicle manufacturer as they roll out of the plant. These data are now commercially available from third-party data broker such as Waze, as you will hear in today's presentation. Among the many potential use of these kind of data, I have asked Dr. Zhang to conduct an analysis to relate to our group, our main focus being traffic operations. I've asked him to conduct an analysis using our past TSOP project as a scenario where we retime the traffic signal and where we used to conduct the evaluation using the floating car method, which is also equipped with a GPS, except there has been so much to desire for in terms of both floating car method that is cost prohibitive to make many runs, as you know, that we during the peak hour period, maybe 1 or 2 vehicle equipped with GPS will be bouncing back and forth on the corridor, and we use those limited GPS data recorded to analyze and assess if the traffic signal timing has been improved. The crowdsourced data, such as the vehicle trajectory data, really open up a new possibility. Now think, instead of a few runs, that there are hundreds of runs during the period of interest on this desire or the corridor of interest. So this analysis, again, try to relay that and show some of the potential benefits of using the trajectory data to replace the floating car methods that we are all familiar with. With that, I would like to introduce Dr. Zhang, and I know his team also worked really hard on this presentation.
First, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the ITS committee for this opportunity, and also thank you so much, Jeff, for the thorough introduction and summary of this presentation. So today's presentation, we're going to talk about how we utilize Weigou's vehicle trajectory data onto intersection or corridors performance evaluations. So we're going to get into some specifics, and hopefully at the end of the presentation, all of us will have more perspective and ideas about first, what is the vehicle trajectory data? Second of all, as alluded by Dr. Jane, how we compare this Weigou vehicle trajectory data to the floating car technologies in terms of evaluation the signalization's performance along corridors. And it's just straightforward thinking. We can apply this data on the corridor level as well as at the intersection level. So the third part, the last part of this presentation today, we're going to also talk about how can we utilize the Weigou trajectory data to look at our intersections performance. Next slide, please. Okay, the data itself is actually fairly simple. So it's just the 3 seconds update frequency of the vehicle trajectory data, and that provides you every 3 seconds the precise location of the vehicle, exactly time of the vehicle, and how fast it's traveling, and the direction it's heading to. It's only coming from passenger vehicles. And we don't necessarily know how many unique samples within our region. It actually needs a lot of work just to figure that out. But we did figure it out in our region. There's on average, there's about 12 to 14,000 unique vehicles running on our street network in our county and Pinal County as well. Connecting such 3 second high frequent trajectory data for us. And to put this into a perspective in the map, let's go to the next slide. So I want to use 1 a.m. kind of right after midnight. Most of the vehicles don't travel. I want to use this as a worst scenario just to show you how good the data's coverage is. So when we plot those 3 seconds data trajectory onto our network, this is how it looks like at 1 a.m. On any given day. And if you zoom into this blue square, which near an airport, you can see exactly how those dots are popping up. Each dots are every 3 seconds update for certain vehicles. Okay, next slide, please. Erica, could you please play the video? So this is another example of how the vehicle trajectory data look like at downtown Phoenix. Every 3 seconds updates, and it's running on our street network. We used to only get to afford to do couple rounds of the floating cars and certain corridors. Now you suddenly have more than 10,000 of the vehicles doing similar jobs for you 24/7, 365. So that's kind of the data samples, magnitude difference between these two different kind of animals. Next slide, please. And what does this, 12 to 14,000 vehicles represent? Does it represent our traffic, and how much? So we compare that with our traffic counts whenever we have the data available. Typically, the vehicle trajectory data represent about 4 to 6% of our live traffic. And when we have our peak traffic in the morning and afternoon, our sample rates also increase. And as you can imagine, during the off-peak, their sample rate is going to go down same way as the traffic volumes variations. And this sample rate is pretty stable, should I say, across different time of the day or across different day of the week, because they kind of remain at about 4 to 6%. We typically see a little bit higher sample rate on the freeways versus arterials, but they're not far off. Next slide, please. Okay, so Jeff already mentioned that we try to compare vehicle trajectory data's analysis results to floating car-based technologies. So we did that on 2 corridors. We use exactly the same days of data for this comparison. One on Rio Salado Parkway in Tempe, another one on the McDowell Road in Phoenix. I should mention that the first one is exactly the floating car versus visual trajectory data. And the second one on McDowell, the data is being connected through TransSync. It's kind of app, but how it works is very, very similar to floating car technologies. So those are the 2 corridors we did comparison for. And Rio Salado, as you may imagine, it's not a very busy corridor. We want to test it out in such a circumstance. How does vehicle trajectory data work? And the McDowell relatively would have more traffic volume on it. So it's kind of a busier corridor. Next slide. So a little bit, illustration for you guys in terms of how different these 2 data connection methods works. First, I want you guys to look at the green color, which represent the floating car trajectories. So, for example, traveling on the eastbound, the floating car would, trace past the entire corridor without making any turn. They will start their, travel at the beginning of the course and finish up, only making the through movements. And the connected vehicle or vehicle trajectory data would represent everything, in color of orange, yellow, and blue. So you will have some of them doing very similar job as floating car, trace past entire corridor, or in more cases you will have, because we can't really dictate the connected vehicles drivers to do exactly what we want them to do. So they would sometimes exit the corridor earlier, or get into the corridor in the middle of the course, or making left turn, right turn at certain points. That's something we cannot control. So, but when you put all of them together, as you can see on this graphic, you ended up with a lot more samples from connected vehicle technologies as compared to a floating car. And even if you only look at the trace path data only from connected vehicle data, it still doesn't compare bad against the sample rate from floating cars. Next slide, please. So this is kind of the high level of comparison between vehicle trajectory data, or we call connected vehicle CV in this case, versus floating car. So we are able to calculate the average and the median travel time because we have so much more samples from CV. So we're able to compare average travel time and median travel time against, from CV against the travel time reported from 2 to 4 rounds of the floating cars. For each direction that's been shown on the top of the slides, and the bottom 2 slides basically shows the bottom one to the left shows the sample rate comparison between blue of CV versus yellow of floating car on segment level. In that case, you include all the possible samples from CV technologies. And if you only look at the trace path only from CV, that's a graphic on the bottom to the right. Blue again represents CV, so they are still in most cases similar or even higher than the sample of the floating car. I will have 1 slide later in this presentation just to show the statistic performance between 2 different technologies. So if you have any question, we can do that later. Next slide, please. And one interesting thing is, because it's 3 seconds continuous coverage, we're able to plot many time space plots. I had a traffic engineering background. I love to do that. So we're able to compare blue again from CV against yellow of the floating cars. So this is where the 2 different technologies have reported similar samples. So they actually produce very similar results in time space diagram. Next slide, please. Okay, I think this really highlights the advantages of the CV technology or trajectory data which is in blue. So when you have much more abundant, samples coming from the field versus very limited run of the floating car, you are able to capture the reliability of the travel time or variation of the travel time using connected vehicle technologies, as highlighted on these slides. So really during the congested time, you want to have more samples coming from your corridor to help you assess the performance of the signalizations. And the very limited run flow from the floating car, it's really hard to do that. Depends on when and how you run the floating car. Sometimes you capture it, sometimes you don't. Next slide, please. And on the real Salado, another direction, pretty much there's no severe or noticeable congestion. Most of the car are able to run freely on the corridor. So that's what's being shown over here. Very similar results from CV versus a floating car in terms of the travel time or time space diagram. However, I think when we deploy some consultant to run the floating car, we ask them to maintain in the median position of the traffic flow. So if you get passed by a vehicle, you need to pass another vehicle, for example, kind of stay as a median of all the traffic as possible as you can. But that's typically not what we see from the connected vehicle. We see when there's less congestion, the CV or trajectory data, vehicle trajectory data would slightly underestimate the travel time. So their travel time reported is going to be slightly lower or slower than the floating car's travel time. But again, it's very close. Next slide, please. Okay, this is just give you some visual representation of the locations reported by two different technologies. So for example, the yellow is a faster speed, the red is a slower speed. So the spectrum coming out from these two different technologies are actually looking very similar. Next slide, please. And other than the travel time, another thing primarily could potentially get measured by floating car or CV is number of stop points and the exact location of the stop points, which is defined as a speed under 5 miles per hour. So, taking real Salado Pkwy as an example, you can see, two different technologies. How are they capturing the stop points locations? Next slide, please. Okay, so that was for the real Salado. Now, a busier, corridor on McDowell Road will not only getting more samples from our CV technologies, we'll also get to compare 3 days as compared to 1 day from real Salado. So we have 3 days of data between two technologies, CV versus a transit or floating car, comparison. Next slide, please. Eric, could you please play the video? So this video is going to give you some direct impression of the vehicle's trees coming from the floating car, which is on the left in orange, versus the trees coming from connected vehicle, which is on the right in yellow. So those are simultaneous time and the day. As you can see, there's more traces observed from the right-hand side, which is coming from the connected vehicle trajectory data. And again, this is for the before project was deployed during the morning rush hours. Next slide, please. Similar thing to show you. This is in the afternoon after the signalization optimization is done. I try to speak louder. If you guys have problems hearing from me, I'll try better. So same impression. So we see more traces or more vehicles trajectories from connected vehicles technologies. And if you could pause, maybe drag the bar a little bit back by a couple of seconds, Eric. Yeah, right there. So that's a good example. If we could pause the video, so you see there's lots of the samples coming from connected vehicles to give you exactly what happens for that particular time. However, within 2 hour span, if we only run 2 to 4 rounds of the floating cars, you miss those situations. You don't necessarily know for any given 15 minutes how do those intersections work, right? Thank you, Eric. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so sample rate comparison, the one to the left is we sum up all the samples from all the segments, but some of those samples don't necessarily trace past the entire corridor. And the one in the middle is trace pass only sample from connected vehicle technologies. And the one to the right is from the transsync or floating car technologies. Obviously, depends on how long your corridor is. The connected vehicle sample rate could potentially, sample rate on trace pass only could potentially drop. The longer your corridor is, the less trace pass sample you have, but we're able to work out differently in terms of only contain the trace path sample or contain all possible samples. We can utilize 2 different data sources to come up with those corridor performance evaluation. Next slide, please. So again, this is just comparing the average travel time, between 2 technologies on the top. And on the bottom is compare number of stop points along the corridor between 2 technologies. The text may be too small, but I can read it to you. So the dark blue is utilizing all samples from CV, and it's average travel time. The second one is all sample from CV, median travel time. And the yellow one is trace pass only from CV, average travel time. And the light green is average travel time from floating cars. Next slide, please. Same thing, time-space diagram, between 2 different technologies. We've seen a similar situation as we have seen in the real Salado example, where potentially utilizing vehicle trajectory data, you can capture travel time variations. Next slide, please. Spectrum of the locations and how fast they travel from 2 different technologies. Very similar, right? Next. Where the stop points are observed from CV versus from floating cars. And in McDowell, we definitely see there's more, stop points captured. Obviously, thank you to the higher, sample rates from the connected vehicle. Next slide, please. So we did some comparison statistically and between CV versus floating car, and we can look at by segment where you have more samples, or you have less sample but still comparable to floating car. I only look at the trace pass. The R square of the travel time estimation between 2 technologies is close to 0.9. 1 being the best. That's not bad. And I would mention the travel time from the CV technology is going to be a little bit slower, faster. I'm sorry. So lower travel time, a little bit faster speed. Next slide. And the number of stop points, it's very close. The CV technologies would overestimate number of stop points, but only by 0.3. So that's almost negligible. And for trace pass sample, only overestimate by 1. Next slide. Okay, summary of the corridor analysis based on vehicle trajectory data. We already mentioned it's different things between CV and the floating car in terms of how they represent the traffic flow. And we know that the CV sample rate is much higher, especially on the segment level. And we did only the comparison for that particular day and time between these technologies. But also you think about it, we have this data every day for the last almost a year and a half, and continuously going to the future. And even we only use the trace pass rate, even though it's much decreased, but it's still very comparable or sometimes higher, in most cases higher, as I understand, to the floating car samples. And floating car sample, again, is 1 second updated frequency versus CV is 3 seconds. But there's no significant analysis difference of using these two different kind of trace data. And during the congestion, definitely there's an advantage of using the CV data because it will give you a full picture, a full spectrum of the space-time diagram of the travel times variation. But on the average, these two technologies, in terms of measuring travel time speed, number of stops, are really close. And just to reiterate the advantages of the CV data, so it's much broader spatial temporal coverages. Pretty much all the arterial freeway segments, you name it, the data covers. And higher sample rates, about 4% of the live traffic, I'm being really, and then reliability measurement, now it's possible because you have much more samples to work with, and cost effectiveness, it's not the real data connection. You don't have to send your consultant out to connect the data for you, and the data comes into your shop. So that also means there's going to be faster turnaround time between the time you want to evaluate your corridor and the time you get your result. Next slide.
Dr. Zhang.
Yep.
I know you still have another section of exciting result on the intersection analysis. Can we go back to the previous slide? I just want to point out, when I discussed this data with Dr. Zhang, that I feel that there is a potential of using these data to replace our typical floating car. But these are the noticeable, worthwhile noting caveat that one has to pay attention to, that when we have an engineer to drive the corridor, they were driving with some specific instructions to stay with the flow, being you got overtaken by one car, you have to try to maintain, you have to take over another car to maintain your flow in the corridor. Another thing, as Dr. Zhang pointed out, and nothing we could do about the CV data, is that when we have the engineer to drive the intersections, 16 of them, they will drive 16 in 16 intersections straight through, back and forth. But the CV data, you have no control. The odds of having a vehicle actually recorded the trip through those 16 intersections of interest diminished as you have a longer and longer corridors. And so one thing that I asked Dr. Zhang to compare with, and was shown in the data, is that if you only filter down to those vehicles that actually traverse through the entire project area on real Salado, versus if we will allow you to take the partial trip segment and you kind of geofence and on those GPS points to where you think those through movements are, and add them up together, and how much of a difference it is, how much do we lose, or how much perhaps the data deteriorate if we use a partial trip. Turned out that it was rather close. Another point that I think we also, Dr. Zhang pointed out in this bullet point is typically there's 1 second. So what about this bigger lag of a 3 second data? Are they, are they suitable to the intended task? And the answer is, for the floating car where we measure the traffic delay and all that, the difference is kind of ignorable. And also we have the advantage of having a large number of these data as opposed to relying on what typically 5, 6 trips. If you consider the peak directions, when you bounce back and forth, you're really lagging each trip at a time. So, you have a coverage every 15 minutes when you make it your way back. So again, I think this is a wonderful finding of, I think this is truly a potential replacement of the floating car method. May I ask Dr. Zhang, what was the penetration rate that the data provider disclosed? What percentage of vehicle are instrumented?
Yeah, actually, they don't point out the penetration rate. It varies by the region, by the state, and it's just one general numbers. I don't have that, but based on our analysis, every day you have roughly 12 to 14,000 cars, during normal days, running on the streets. That compares to roughly 4 to 6% of the sample. So that's actually very, very high. For certain exercise, for example, measuring speed, travel time, delay, 4 to 6% of the actual traffic is very high, penetration rate. And I think statistically, you end up having the estimate coming from this 4% of sample to have really high, confidence level.
And I think another positive point of the CV data is that we could only expect that this penetration rate, percent of the vehicle instrument, improve over time. So it only get better, not worse, right?
Yeah, based on our experience, that's a very good question, Jeff. We don't know yet, but based on the technologies we have worked in the last 10 years, think about where we started, at the very beginning of using the third party's speed data, their sample rates, has always been growing for this many years. And based on, what we saw over there, we expect the connected vehicles data sample rates to increase, to grow as well, or at least to maintain at a similar level. If in that case, I think it's abundant for many of the exercise analysis we talk about on the corridor level. But we certainly expect them to grow. In that case, that will be even more, data for us to work with.
So my final question to Dr. Zhang is that, is this whole thing computational demanding? What kind of resources we're talking about required to process these data?
Yes, I actually saved this question to the end, but I can briefly mention that
so
here.
I'm jumping on.
It is computational challenging for us. Obviously, if we have super fast computer, we're able to do that a little bit faster. We're looking into those solutions. Right now, most of the work are being done manually. At least, we need to define the corridors, geofence, get the data selected from the database, and do the rest of the magics kind of automatically from there. So it's not fully automated yet. I will talk about some alternatives at the end of the presentation, so we can look into that. So far, it is a little bit computational challenging for us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for doing this corridor level comparison with floating car. Please proceed with your next section. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I have probably another 5 to 6 minutes to give you guys an update on the similar, region. So when we talk about corridor, Jeff already mentioned, the floating car doesn't turn on the corridor, and sometimes the signalization's performance at an intersection level has much to do with the crossroad, right? And if we only analyze through movement, which is essentially what we did on the corridor level, you kind of miss the whole picture. You don't know exactly if you find out there's a hotspot or bottleneck on your corridor, you want to look at that particular intersections, right? So that's why, not only we need to look at the corridor level, we also need to look at the intersection level, and potentially we need to connect those dots and the lines together to give you the full picture in terms of how does this entire system work. So let's go to the next slide. Can you play the video, please? So this is I-17 Indian School. So this is just another visualization of the live traffic coming from the connected vehicle technologies. How does traffic look like at these intersections, as well as freeway off ramp and Indian schools interchanges. And next slide, please. So MAC has developed different work to analyze this different type of intersections. We can analyze standard 4-leg to 6-leg of arterial intersections. We can analyze buoy or diamond freeway interchanges between the off ramps and the local arterial streets with or without frontage roads. And the main thing we measure is turning movement ratio. We don't necessarily know the whole universe of the traffic at intersection. We only know a sample. But we can use that sample to measure the travel delay by turning movement. And essentially you can convert that to the level of service. And you can also look at some other matrices such as the percent of arrival on green, percentage of the stop points, stuff like that. Next slide, please. So this graphic basically explains how do we work in terms of getting the proper data selected. So we start from the aerial images, of the particular intersections, and then based on that, we define a geofence at these intersections. And once that geofence is defined, we can use that to select the relevant data at this intersection at any given day or time range for the analysis. Next slide, please. So this is an example explaining what kind of control delay we can potentially measure at intersection. The dots on the top represent one particular vehicles passing through these intersections. How does that start the deceleration and get to the stop phase, and then waiting for the traffic light to turn green again, and then how does this vehicle accelerate, increase their speed once the light turns to green, and accelerate all the way to near the free flow conditions. So there is 3 phases: deceleration delay, stop delay at the intersection, and acceleration delay from intersection to the downstream traffic leg. When you add them together, that's the control delay for particular vehicles. So we can analyze that with vehicle trajectory data. We can analyze that by individual vehicle, or by a certain turning movement, by a certain leg, or for the whole intersection. Next slide, please. So for example, we can calculate the delay in seconds utilizing different threshold values. We can report the turning movement ratio, like percentage, in terms of how much percent of traffic by a certain time of the day making the through, left, or right turn. We can give you exactly how many samples we have observed, and you get to select the day and time range. And you can analyze percent of the arrival on green. I know that's kind of big measurements traffic engineering look at the intersection level, or look at the percentage of the stop points. Everything can be done, like I said, by turning movement and by time. Next slide. And then you can just convert it into a diagram like this, where you can look at the turning movement ratio and the delay in seconds by a certain time of the day. And then if you put them all together, you get to estimate average vehicle delay at intersection, and that can be converted to level service. So you can use that to look at how does your whole intersection perform by time of the day, as I'm showing on the bottom to the right. So for any given hour, what is the average delay in seconds at this particular intersections? Next slide, please. And if you aggregate up, all the hours of the day, you can actually monitor the whole intersection's performance for extended period of time. Every day, what is the maximum or average delay per day? So that gives you the peak and off-peak seasons, those kind of flavors by a certain time of the day, or you can look at the whole day. Next slide, please. And then we compare the turning movement ratio from the video, which is the sample, 46%, as I emphasized, to the turning movement counts MAC has connected. Some comparison was done simultaneously, some are not. It turns out to be actually very close between these two sources. We received R-square of higher than 0.93, sometimes 0.95, depends on what you're comparing with. And some other statistic check we did is we recommend, we think that once your hourly intersection traffic volume, which is the incoming flow from all the possible legs at the intersection in a given hour, exceeding 2,600 vehicles, you're gonna receive really close estimation of the turning movement ratio from radio data. Next slide. So I believe this is the end of my slides. I probably want to dwell on that a little bit longer. So again, connected vehicle technology has really enabled us many new ways to measure intersection performance, very similar to what we have just discussed, much broader spatial temporal coverages. And you can literally do that on any major intersections. There's adequate sample rates for you to run the estimation of the delay and even calculate the travel time reliability measurements. Cost effectiveness and the fast turnaround time is very similar to what we have discussed on a corridor level. So you do not need actual data connection. If your goal at intersection level is just to measure the delay, you don't have to do that now. The data coming into the shop will do that for you. And the last point, like Jeff mentioned, there are some alternative solutions. Some of them may already realize that the INRIX has kind of developed a similar tools like we just look at. They call signal analytics, and they can actually run the exactly same if it's not more than that, measurements at the intersection level. So everything we talk about that can be done through this interface. They already, I think they're aggressively marketing this new tools in the nation. So some of them may already attended their workshops. So I wouldn't waste any more minutes on that. But there is alternative solutions to that. So I think at the end of that, I just want to summarize. I feel like we are in a similar situation like 10 years ago. MAC used to run one of the largest travel speed study in the nation 12 years ago, I believe. Back then, we had to deploy floating car to connect the speed data, travel time data for us. And then back then, starting from 2008 and 2009, we started to see, INRIX and, NAVTech, now called here, private sector speed data get into this game. It's totally a game changer, and it kind of did the similar things like this vehicle trajectory data does to us. So now we no longer run the travel speed study because we can just buy or acquire the third-party speed data from multiple sources, and they also developed the fancy, really matured, data platform for us to run an analysis on it. And I feel like we are right at the similar spot in terms of applying the vehicle trajectory data to intersections or corridor level analysis. What the floating car technology is capable of doing can be done with vehicle trajectory data much faster, much more efficiently. And I think another big point I want to mention is with much broader spatial temporal coverages. You don't have to limit your evaluation of your signalization at any given day or a few hours. You can evaluate that continuously. So we don't necessarily have matured the platform to leverage vehicle trajectory data yet. It's a big data, it takes effort and time to process and to analyze. But I feel like we're on the way to get to there. So next slide. So just leave my contact information over there, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Wang, Dr. Zhang, I'm sorry. Are there any questions for Dr. Zhang?
Yeah, this is Hong. So, Dr. Jones, thank you for the information, the presentation. Does the data come along with the SPATA data? Because you mentioned you can get the like a percent of arrival on green and all those statistics, but without the SPATA data, so that won't be possible.
Yes, could you repeat your second part of the question?
So yeah, just the SPATA data. I mean the traffic. It's the trajectory data, vehicle trajectory data. So my question is, does this data come with the signal phase and timing information?
Okay, got it. Does the data come with a signal timing information? No, it does not.
So then how did you, I remember you mentioned you can get the percent arrival on green. So without those information, how could we get those?
Yes, got it. So this is a passive data collection effort. So the data comes in without showing any information from the supply side, from the signalization and from intersection side. So how we calculate the percent arrival is we analyze this the vehicle's 3 seconds trajectory, and we have a threshold to detect which particular time this vehicle is in stop phase versus running phase. So we can analyze or calculate the frequency of the stop mode versus running mode. That's how we come up with a percentage of arrival on green. So if there's a vehicle passing through an intersection, for example, without making complete stop, so that's not included in the percentage of arrival. That's included, I'm sorry, in the percent of arrival on green. If a vehicle shows a certain time passing through the intersection at the stop state, so that's not included in the calculation. So that's how we classify the data into two portions, and then the two portion basically is what we use to calculate the percent of arrival on green. So it's a passive way to calculate it. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
This is Jeff. I think I want to point out that there was a very good question from Hong, that this analysis is done without the signal status information. And so is this offer of MRICS. I mean, when they offer up, there's no integration with the ATMS to get the signal status information. So I know that we're using probably the same term, arrival on green. This is also the term or major performance matrices used in ATSPM. And I also heard a lot of references comparing that you can do ATSPM everywhere, but with this you don't need a signal integration, but gonna give you some kind of performance similar performances. So one has to be careful of how these matrices are defined differently. I want to point out that this is a great different perspective of how you look at the intersection performance. However, this type of analysis does not replace the ATSPM, because the ATSPM is so specific. It relates to the particular cycle, particular phases and all that give you a lot more information. Of course, with that arrival on green and all that, you literally see those relate to every cycle to that particular phase. So I would say that this still is with the crowdsourced data. This is a great source of, if you have the general interest of knowing a performance from another supplemental perspective. I think this is a great source.
Thank you, Jeff. Mike, you have a question?
I have a lot of questions, but I'm not going to ask them. But this is awesome. That's all I will say. I really appreciate you guys presenting this. I mean, my mind went like 1,000 different ways, and I think that this is going to be a great tool in the future for, analyzing how things are working here within the region and identifying areas, of improvement, or even identifying areas that have been improved, even if it is with, ATS-PMs. I like it. That's all. I just wanted to say thanks.
Thanks, Mike. And as usual, we all do appreciate the work that Meg does and the efforts of gaining data like this and showing ways to use it. I will go ahead now and move on to item number 7, request for future agenda items. Does any member of the ITS committee have topics or issues of interest that you would like to have considered for discussion at a future meeting? If so, please indicate so by raising your hand. And as always, you can always send ideas in directly to Dr. Jeff Jank anytime if there's other ideas that you have after this. We will move on to item number 8, comments from the ITS committees, and I will go ahead and go through our list, and beginning with Susan Anderson. I'd like to invite members to share information related to ongoing ITS related project activities in their jurisdictions.
Yes, I don't have much of an update, but did want to let everyone know that tonight is the night that they have the virtual public meeting for the I-10 Broadway curve improvement. Starts at 5:30, and you can register online at the i10broadwaycurve.com website. They've also issued the Curve app that, if you want to remain updated on the project, encourage everyone to try that out. Other than that, I don't have any other updates. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan. Hugh?
Nothing for Goodyear. Thank you.
Thank you. Tricia?
No update from Mesa today.
Thank you, Tricia. Alan?
No update on the projects from Glendale, but I do have a couple of openings that we just posted. One is an ITS tech and one is a senior signal tech that we just posted on NeoGov.
Thank you for that, Alan. Albert?
I've got an update regarding staffing. So sorry, Alan, but the opening that Alan has for his ITS tech is our new ITS specialist. John Walver came on board with us about a month ago. So we finally do have somebody in here full time.
Great. It's glad to see you getting help finally. Thanks, Albert. Dana?
We too have a senior engineer position open for our signal systems engineer. Other than that, no updates for Chandler.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So yes, if Scottsdale is going to have a new position open up soon in the next couple of weeks, so it will be an engineer position working at TMC and will help us with the traffic signal timing and also street lighting program.
Thank you, Hong.
Thank you.
Bruce?
No real updates for Phoenix, but it's encouraging to note that if people want to work, they can come to the greater Phoenix area and get employed. We're all trying to find people. We're all fighting for the same scarce resources. So, you know, all of us keep doing the best we can. We need the staff here in the valley.
Definitely. Thanks, Bruce. David?
No updates from Tempe.
Okay, thank you. My name's next on the roll call. So City of Peoria, this isn't directly ITS, but we are in our traffic engineering group, we're fully staffed again. We have a new traffic engineer. He came from the consulting side, so we actually didn't purge him from another municipality, but Austin Kennedy has started just this last week. He's going to be doing pretty much all the non-ITS things in our traffic engineering group. But the nice thing is it alleviates myself and Jody and Sean from having to take on other responsibilities. We also have two projects that just kicked off. One is we're going to be implementing some network management software, What's Up Gold, to manage our network for outages and stuff. And we also have a big, huge study starting for a CIP project that's going to be next fiscal year, but it's going to upgrade all of our, the study will be looking at potential redundancy through other municipalities so that we don't have the potential of losing our trunk line that runs north and south in the city. And when it gets cut, right now we lose the entire north part of the city. So that study is going to identify those potential ways that we can get through, as well as doing some upgrades to our North Peoria area, some 10 gig node switches that would allow us to backhaul faster from branches there. So we're excited about that. With that, we'll move on to Scott.
No updates from Pinal County.
Thanks, Scott. Eduardo.
No updates from City of Maricopa.
Thank you. Marshall. Marshall. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to Raquel.
No updates from the city of Apache Junction.
Thank you, Raquel. Mike?
No updates, but I was going to make a comment a little earlier. I mean, there's a lot going on, but I did speak with, this is just a thought. I don't even want to obviously discuss it or anything, but we had some communication over here earlier, and we were meeting over here with the MAG RCN switch, and Ryan was here, and I was brainstorming some ideas, and I'd just like to throw out there the idea, and I'll bring it up again at this RCN meeting, but of possibly doing, because we have good records of all of our fiber and all of our splices and exactly where it is and what's going on. But a lot of that has to do with, an individual that's here as well. I mean, we can access it and everything, and we know, but we would love to transition that, to a more modern solution. And in talking with Ryan, I know he would like to do the same. So just throw the idea out there of like maybe a joint, even a pilot project of getting our stuff mapped along with the RCN, portion. And hopefully we can identify something regionally that everybody can jump on to if they choose to. That's just a thought. That's all.
I think that's a great idea. We'll have further discussion on that. With that,
hey,
we'll
Steve.
Yes. Oh,
Steve,
Marshall.
this is Marshall.
Hey, Marshall.
Yeah, I got two meetings going at once. I just want to say for Queen Creek, our system performance measure project is advertised. ADOT's bidding that, and we'll be managing that, but that should be underway. So kind of a good segue into the session that Wang was doing. Is a lot of those performance measures we're getting from our system now. And like everybody else, we have an opening for traffic engineer as well.
Okay. A lot of openings.
The other thing, to piggyback on what Mike is talking about, we do have local funding to start to look at a fiber management system for the town. So we're going to start by coming out with a system requirements document, and then next fiscal year, looking to go out to bid and get a product for the town. So just, that's what's going on.
Thanks, Marshall. Tessa?
No update from El Mirage.
Okay, thank you. Tony, do you have any other updates that you didn't already cover during your?
Yeah, Steve, I just have one staffing update. Our system performance team leader position has been filled by Eunice Chan. She was previously the area engineer in the Central District here in Arizona. So now that area engineering position is vacant, and the division will be looking to advertise that fairly soon. That's all I have.
Thank you, Tony. John? I don't know. John.
Yeah, just a few things. First, we doubled the size of our traffic engineering department. We have Frank, and I'm gonna butcher his last name, Ganoni. I know Bruce and Simon are familiar with him. He's with the city of Phoenix, and I know Frank's online. So sorry, Frank, if I messed that up. We have a couple of signals under design construction, so we'll be adding some more signals to the city. We are working with a consultant through ADA to implement one of the MAG ITS projects that we were awarded. The second one, we are in the procurement stage of the grid smart cameras. Hopefully that will be completed in the next couple of weeks. And finally, if you are heading to LA, Rocky Point anytime soon, just plan on some delay through the Buckeye area because the I-10 widening project has started, and that's a 2-year fun exercise for us to live through. So that's it from Buckeye.
Thank you, John. April?
Hello, this is April from Maricopa County. Just a quick update on staffing. If some of you are probably aware, but Rob Barberry is no longer with McDowell, and Alex Limka has filled the ITS project manager role. So for all of your RADS needs, feel free to reach out to Alex. I think some of you are already aware of him. He was previously the analyst in our TMC. So with him moving on to higher position, we do have a vacancy in our TMC as well. So you'll probably see that come across your boards. On a project level, we did complete our ATSPM gap study. So if anyone is interested in that, feel free to reach out and I'll share that report with you. And we're wrapping up RAD's gap study as well right now. So that'll be shared with you guys soon as well. That's it.
Thank you, April. Marty?
No updates from Valley Metro.
Okay, thanks, Marty. With that, the next meeting is going to be of the Intelligent Transportation Committee will be held at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, September 1st, 2021 via virtual conference, unless otherwise notified. And just that reminder that we've got the deadlines for the TIP projects coming up, so just keep that in mind as well. With that, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Steve.